buried in the cat litter were the mummified, dismembered remains of Yunsun Jun. Hello there and welcome. I hope you're doing well. My name is Gabby and this next case can be quite difficult to follow as there are many different layers, but I will do my best to explain as clearly as I can. In today's video we are talking about Terry Rasmussen, aka the Chameleon Killer. In June 2002, a woman went missing from Richmond, California. Her name was Yunsun Jun. She was in her mid-40s, a chemist at Biorad Laboratories, and her partner, Larry Vanner, was giving her loved ones inconsistent stories and excuses for her absence. A friend of Yunsun's, Renee Rose, didn't believe him for a minute, and after failing to get a straight answer as to where she was, she went straight to the Contra County Sheriff to report the disappearance. The case was taken on by Detective Roxanne Gruenheid. When Detective Gruenheid and a colleague searched the home Yunsun had shared with Larry Vanner, they found an immense pile of cat litter in a crawl space with an axe nearby. Buried in the cat litter were the mummified, dismembered remains of Yunsun Jun. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Larry Vanner was arrested for the murder in November of that year. The first surprise came when, after being fingerprinted, his prints were found to already be in the system. In 1986, a man going by the name Gordon Jensen had abandoned a 5-year-old that was presumed to be his daughter by leaving her with another family, the Deckers, for what was supposed to be 2 weeks, with the promise that the Deckers could adopt her afterwards. Instead, he took off and the girl, Lisa, was taken into protective custody. As part of the investigation into the child abandonment case, fingerprint samples were taken from the Scotts Valley, California RV park where Gordon lived and worked and found to match those taken following the arrest of a man identified as Curtis Mayo Kimball for driving under the influence in 1985. The man in question was finally arrested for child abandonment in 1989 and was sentenced to 3 years in prison, of which he served 1 before being paroled and absconding. Now, Larry Vanner was found to be another alias of the same man. Yunsun Jun's killer pled no contest in 2003 and was sentenced to 15 years to life. The plea came as a surprise, with Detective Gruenheid believing it to be due to him overhearing the detective saying that he was going to request a paternity test for Lisa. The paternity test established that Lisa wasn't the man's biological daughter. Larry Vanner, aka Curtis Mayo Kimball, aka Gordon Jensen, died in High Desert State Prison, California on the 28th of December 2010 at the age of 67 from a combination of lung cancer, COPD and pneumonia. But that was far from the end of the story. In 2003, a case was opened by San Bernardino Sheriff Department that was aimed at finding Lisa's biological family. In 2015, it was taken on by genetic genealogist Barbara Ray Ventnor, and after 20,000 hours of work, she found Lisa's maternal grandfather, Armand Baudin. This led to the discovery of 2 things. The first was that Lisa's real birth name was Dawn Baudin. The second was far more alarming. Dawn and her mother Denise Baudin had disappeared from Manchester, New Hampshire in 1981, along with Denise's boyfriend Robert Evans. Denise and her daughter hadn't been reported missing by her family, believing that she'd skipped town to avoid having to pay some debts that she owed. It didn't take long for everyone to realise that Denise's boyfriend, Robert Evans, was yet another alias of the man who'd killed Yunsun Jun, which combined with everything else that had happened painted a pretty grim picture of Denise's fate. A missing persons report was finally filed for her in 2017. That same year, the authorities decided to get to the bottom of who the killer really was. A video of a police interview with him was released in June 2017 as part of an appeal for information regarding his true identity. Among those who came forward was the son of a man named Terry Rasmussen, who hadn't seen his father since the mid-70s. A DNA test confirmed that the mystery man was in fact Terry Rasmussen. Terry Peter Rasmussen had been born in Denver, Colorado on the 23rd of December 1943. In 1969, he married and fathered 3 children, including the son who identified him, while living in Phoenix, Arizona and Redwood City, California. In 1975, his wife left him and took the children with her after he was arrested for aggravated assault. Terry disappeared from their lives a couple of years before the divorce was finalized in 1978. What followed was a string of false identities and crimes that went on for decades until his arrest in 2002. As those investigating the case discovered, his crimes included multiple murders and the body count kept rising. The first victim anyone knew about was, of course, Yoon Jun. Then there was Denise Bowden, who, while still officially being a missing person due to her body not being found, is believed to have been murdered somewhere in California. Additionally, when Lisa was interviewed by police immediately following her abandonment in 1986, they asked her if she had any siblings, to which the then 5-year-old replied that she did, but they died eating grass mushrooms when they were out camping, which indicates the existence of an unknown number of unidentified victims in that instance. Unfortunately, between Lisa's young age at the time and the number of years that have passed since then, more information hasn't been available. The connection with early 80s New Hampshire provided by the identification of Denise Bowden as Lisa's mother also linked Terry Rasmussen to one of the state's most infamous cold cases. In 1985, the partly skeletonized remains of a woman and a female child were found in a 55-gallon drum near the site of a burned-down store in Bear Brook State Park near Allenstown, New Hampshire. Examination of the remains revealed that they'd both died from blunt force trauma to the head, and that the child had been between aged 8 and 10 years old at the time of her death. With nothing else to go on, the case went cold, and the 2 victims were buried in Allenstown Cemetery with a headstone that read, "Here lies the mortal remains known only to God, of a woman aged 23 to 33 and a girl child aged 8 to 10. Their slain bodies were found on November 10, 1985 in Bear Brook State Park. May their souls find peace in God's loving care." On the 9th of May 2000, another 55-gallon drum was found just far away enough from the first one to have not been discovered when the area was searched in 1985. Inside were the skeletons of 2 small children, both girls who had died from blunt force trauma. Despite the decade and a half between the discoveries of the 2 sets of remains, investigators quickly realised that they'd all been murdered at the same time, and the victims were dubbed the Allenstown 4 or the Bear Brook Murders in the press. But again, the case went cold. In 2017, with it now being known that a murderer was in the area in question and that one of his assumed victims went missing during the appropriate time period, the Bear Brook case was reopened. DNA testing revealed that the unidentified woman wasn't Denise Bowden. However, it also revealed that one of the 3 children, the one who'd been referred to as the middle child up to that point, was unrelated to the other 3 victims and was the biological daughter of Terry Rasmussen. With the probable killer identified, the case moved on to identifying the victims. In October 2018, New Hampshire Public Radio released a podcast on the case. The podcast captured the attention of Rebecca Heath, a 34-year-old librarian from Connecticut, who began spending her free time scouring the internet for any clues she could find. Eventually, she found a post from 1999 on an Ancestry site forum from someone looking for their half-sister Sarah McWaters, who disappeared as an infant in the late 70s, along with her mother Marlise Honeychurch and older sister Mary Vaughan. Upon contacting the poster, Rebecca discovered that Marlise had been dating Terry Rasmussen. From other relatives, she discovered that Marlise had left La Puente, California with him and her children shortly after Thanksgiving 1978 after an argument with her mother. No one in the family ever heard from her or the children again. It is unknown how long they lived after their disappearance, but based on Terry Rasmussen's movements around the country, they were likely killed by 1981 at the latest. Rebecca passed the information along to the relevant authorities, and DNA testing of the remains found at Bear Brook confirmed that the adult woman, oldest child and youngest child were Marlies Honeychurch, Mary Vaughan and Sarah McWaters. The unrelated child, Terry Rasmussen's daughter, remains unidentified. In addition to the Allenstown 4, Yun Sun Jun, Denise Bowden and the unidentified siblings mentioned by Lisa, there are several more possible victims of Terry Rasmussen that the authorities are aware of. One is the unknown mother of the unidentified girl from Bear Brook, who, going by Terry's usual MO, was likely murdered by him. Another is a woman named Elizabeth Evans, who was listed as Terry's wife on legal documents when he was living in Manchester, New Hampshire, under the name Robert Evans. Although, given the time period, it is possible that Elizabeth Evans was a pseudonym of Marlies Honeychurch. There are also a number of cold cases that are suspected to be linked to Terry Rasmussen, including the April 1980 disappearance of 14-year-old Laureen Rahn from Manchester, New Hampshire, and the June 1980 disappearance of 25-year-old Denise Denault, also from Manchester, New Hampshire. Unfortunately, with Terry Rasmussen dead, it is unlikely we'll ever know the true number of lives he ended. That was the case of Terry Rasmussen, aka the Chameleon Killer. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you like true crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I release new videos every Monday and Friday. But until I see you again, please be safe, be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.